number of different statutes. I do represent a lot of clients in the False Claims Act,
Right.
where whistleblowers are able to bring claims on behalf of the government, and they're key because without them, most of these claims don't come to light, and recover money when the government's been defrauded. And here, what we're talking about today with S&P is a number of different tools the government used. And again, this is all coming out of the mortgage crisis, so there is a lot of anger involved, and there is also a lot of focus on the government to go after these cases. And this is a particularly interesting case because they're going after a rating agency, which is one step removed from the person issuing all these bad residential mortgage-backed securities. The whole claim is that S&P had knowingly did not lower the ratings, causing investors to be out billions of dollars, millions and millions and $1 billion. The settlement was $1.37 billion. And there was a False Claims Act aspect, too, and the False Claims Act is where the government, the state or federal government, has actually been defrauded itself, and also not just investors, but directly have suffered losses. And California's largest pension fund settled around the same time for $125 million, where the pension fund bought all these bad securities, or the allegations, because of the ratings given by Standard & Poor's, knowingly false, in order to
well, that's exactly
the issuers and bankers.
That's where I'd like to go back again to my opening statement. We're just angry, period. When a story shows up, right away, here's what the public will tell me 40 years on the air. You know, Ed, they're all lying to you. They lie on both sides. It's one big fraternity of Ivy League dudes and trust fund babies. They use this game of either government regulation or special to pull the wool way over your eyes. Now, I don't want to believe that my dad was like that too. But man, Raphael, again, you're the expert. Up close, who's clean in this game?
Well, I think it's more a better an answer I can give you is that there's a lot of fraud going on out there, and I would say that the whistleblowers who bring this fraud to the light are really doing a credit because they. It's often, again, whistleblowers who bring this fraud to light, and it's they who are putting their families' careers possibly on the line in order to come forward, and they will be incentivized to do so, but they're still putting their careers on the line, their families on the line, to bring to light the fact that the United States government is being ripped off, or SEC regulations are being violated, or the states are being ripped off and defrauded. So, you know, and they really do help expose all this fraud and help recover and help the United States and the states actually recover fraud and penalize the perpetrators. And in this case, some would say companies who have caused the economic crisis.
Right. I'm sure there's a lot of that mixed in there. Now, as a litigator, what do you go to court over? When you litigate, what are you litigating?
Well, I am a commercial litigator, and I litigate all sorts of criminal litigation and fraud, but a lot of my clients are whistleblowers, so I actually bring cases on behalf of the United States government, in the name of the United States government or various states, against companies that have defrauded the United States out of money. For example, Medicare providers or hospitals that have billed the government for things they should not have billed for, defense contractors.
Right.
I will then bring the suit on behalf of the government and representing my client, the whistleblower, who's the one who brought this information to the government, and help the government recover. And the government can recover 3 times whatever it was hurt. These are severe penalties, civil penalties, plus penalties on top of that. And the whistleblower is entitled to a bounty for doing so, an award to incentivize them to take these risks and bring the lawsuit.
That, you know what, it's been, in your opinion, you agree with me, a lot of people, whistleblower has been a great concept since it's been in, I think I was a teenager when we started reading about them. That's great. But the audience, you agree? I mean, the concept is awesome. That somebody could get, protected, blow the lid off of somebody who, is a corporation big enough to make, as you say, their life miserable. That's great, right? That sounds very American, right?
I
Great.
think so, and it certainly has increased, and it certainly led to lots and lots of recoveries, and ultimately taxpayer dollars that the United States has been defrauded out of.
You got it. Now, the first thing that many of us think when we hear that is we saw the movie The Juror with the girl and Alec Baldwin, and you always can get somebody's address. You always can find out what their economic needs are. You can always offer money for their child's leukemia if they'll just let us pollute the river or steal from the people. You know, how could, again, this is me listening to people over the years, maybe a little skeptical, right? Talk radio crowd saying, you know, what did they make? Special honest people who are going to do this work that offset the wealthy criminals? And I say to them, you got to keep working a system. And since, Raphael, you're a cog in the system, and that's not demeaning, you're a part of a very important system. Can this system safeguard us against S&P kind of fraud where the agencies who help the billionaires are all in it together? And me and some schmo waiting for the number 6 train think that a whistleblower is going to save us from them. Try that big question for the listeners. You know, believability, this whole thing.
Well, there's a huge amount of fraud, and you hear about even in the pharmaceutical industry that fraud and being smacked down for fraud is just the cost of doing business and doesn't reach their profits. But you still see the False Claims Act and other tools the government is using that are often come from whistleblowers as being a huge, probably one of the most effective tools that the government has in order to combat fraud. So will it eradicate it? I don't know that fraud could ever be eradicated, but I know that it is helping. I know it's recovering taxpayer dollars. I know that when you just look at when the False Claims Act, for example, which is one of the key statutes whistleblowers use to do this, was broadened decades ago, you just see a continued increase of good cases and return to the United States Treasury of dollars that it was defrauded. So you see it working, and you see it with every announcement that the Department of Justice makes every year that it's working. And you see it with the actually public continue to now suddenly know about it. Years ago, no one even knew about it. There was just a select few. I see more and more. It is a very specialized niche that I'm in, but I still see more and more lawyers and other people become aware of it.
You mean
there's just so much recovery that has happened.
Right. In other words, there really is. There's a lot of work to be done there. Is that what you're saying?
There's a lot of it's doing great, and I think it has to continue to do great.
Okay.
And more. What's nice though is it does incentivize people to come forward. That is the ultimate protection, because you can't just say, "Don't worry, you'll get your job back."
Right.
That's not enough.
Not.
That's not enough when you're going up against very formidable opponents, and your career is on the line.
All right. Fair enough. Now I like to say in the show, this is the point in the interview where I like to say, now we're rocking and rolling a little bit. Now I feel like, you're really opening up to me a little bit. So you stated it, right? You're never going to eradicate the kind of thing that you're in there trying to help reform, correct? You're not going to get eradication. Take reform as you can get it. Is that right?
I think that's right.
That's
I think
right.
All we can do is combat it and disincentivize it and incentivize people to bring it to light.
Okay. Is it kind of the equivalent of this going after the mafia 30, 40 years ago? They're huge. They're powerful. You've got to craft laws that specifically ensnare them, because the mafia used to do it behind a closed door. But businesses do it behind closed doors on Fifth Avenue. I mean, the idea of conceiving these huge schemes, to the average guy and gal on the couch, they flip out. They go, well, if they can figure all that out, what shot do we ever have of not eradicating? I listened to Ed Tyll. That Raphael Katz was a very, very nice lawyer. But, honey, you and me, we've been on the planet so long. This thing's going to eat us alive. There's so much at stake. They'll do anything to rip us off. Help the public with that side of it, Raphael. Let's assure people the system's workable and it doesn't look like a sham to make us feel better.
Well, what we're seeing though is record size settlements and recoveries from the United States unprecedented against these companies using these tools of the False Claims Act, or what's called FIREA, which is another whistleblower statute, or the SEC, which also whistleblowers can receive awards to come forward. All these things where there are whistleblowers who can often be there, and you're seeing these record-size awards. You're also sometimes seeing criminal prosecutions coupled with it. All these things are doing more and more and more to check this fraud, to combat it, and to recover money. So I wouldn't say it's hopeless. I would say rather we're seeing more and more done to combat it. Yes, the numbers are huge of fraud, but there is also increased numbers of people coming forward to fight it.
All right. Just the other day, you probably even know about this, but it was on the public media, and, two experts go like this. Well, we have the new regulations now. And they say, yes, you know what the problem with the regulations is? And the guy goes, no, what's the problem? The people that wrote them really don't know the business well enough. And the people who know the business well enough are sitting there like the Cheshire Cat, waiting for them to finish it, drop the new regulations down. He walks down the hall. He goes, well, those clowns in Washington thought they had us this time. Take a look at paragraph 3, and then read so-and-so versus so-and-so. I want you to put that together, make it a confidential memo, and you report to me if you have any problems. That's private business. Why wouldn't they, every time a ruling is made, get 10 of you to distinguish without a difference, add 9 paragraphs, get a little lobbying, and before you know it, even the bank examiner says, well, I got to be honest with you, I'm not really sure what the regulation is going for. Well, thanks for coming down, Bob. It's always good to be regulated by the federal government. Can I get you some coffee? Validate your parking. Thank God that idiot's out of here. I'm not kidding. It feels that way on the subway. Help me.
Well,
I know that's a little bit.
You're going to see. Well, you're going to see. Obviously, it's a defense strategy to say no. That's not what that law means. You're never going to see that go away in whatever context of the law, criminal or civil. And you're going to see some of this in gray areas where maybe there is a valid question. Maybe there is a valid question of whether a regulation is ambiguous or what exactly.
And guess
on the other side, there are times where there are blatant violations of regulations. I mean, where billions of dollars are being recovered, where you can't even hide behind a regulation. That's what's so fascinating is how much actual blatant fraud there is versus, kind of what can we get away with.
Are you of the school of thought it's really not in your purview as a litigator to go to the policy? Because when I was in law school, they always trivialized the policy implications. But on your last point, the ferocity with which the violators toil late night. Have we done anything that makes it less in their interest? I mean, yes, there'll always be corruption, but can we disincentivize, to use your earlier word, can't we disincentivize them so it's so disparate, it's totally not worth it? I heard the other day there was a high fine given. Do fines cripple them or give them a black and blue? If it's a black and blue, they'll take them all day long. If they really can't walk right, then they have to do something else. You see my crazy?
It's a combination of things.
Help me out.
And I agree with you that just a fine can be recovered. These huge fines I think are helpful when it's just like $1 million slap on the wrist for a big company. When you're talking about $1 billion, I think that is definitely something that can't be shaken away. But also, you do have increased criminal prosecutions. That's a big disincentive. Because if it's just disincentive, because if you're the CEO and you're committing fraud and you can go to jail, that's a little different than your company having to pay a fine. It's going to give you some pause, I think. I think when you also have increased whistleblowers and protections for whistleblowers, you know that if you're doing something in your company is doing something wrong, there is someone there who can bring it to light, expose your company. If there's government funding involved, your company could lose that government funding, and you could even go to jail. So I think the combination of knowing whistleblower protections along with criminal and stiff civil penalties have become an effective cocktail, and I think that increased use of that will continue to be a good tool to combat fraud versus just a small fine alone.
Raphael, do you mind if people listening right now say, wow, that was really potent stuff. Hopefully Ed will replay this later in the day and I can hear it a second time. What should the public know after having listened to you today that they or a family member should know if they think they might be a whistleblower, there's a purpose for it? Are there steps that are, this is exactly the first couple of things you do to protect yourself and to find out if you really can blow the whistle on somebody? What do you say to someone like that?
Well, I have people who come to me all the time who are whistleblowers. Obviously, there are fears, and I explain to them the various protections they have. I have things I can do to protect their anonymity for at least a temporary part of time during the government investigation, if not longer. And there are, again, tools we can use within the statute that protect them. There are the incentives and things for them to weigh and reward them that they often have to think about. But I tell every client who comes in, yes, this is something that could affect your career negatively. You lose your job, legal or not, over it, and they have to know that. But some of them understand that, and they're willing to do the right thing, and also they understand that they are going to be compensated for taking this risk, and that's the just fair thing, that they should be royally compensated for taking these risks.
Without a doubt, right? Without a doubt on that side, you still must worry about them a little bit. Do you watch a lot of movies? I know some lawyers, they have no time, and then do you watch a film every once in a while?
Do I watch a film?
Yeah.
Yes, I have occasion to.
At 1 o'clock in the morning, no noise, just you. You said, do you ever watch The Insider with Al Pacino? Sure. That he wanted to blow the whistle on the tobacco people. That movie is so scary, I hate to watch it late at night. The guy's putting things in the mailbox. So if that's Hollywood's sensationalizing of the whistleblower experience, can you qualify that, balance that, take some of the helium out of it? What would you say to people who saw that movie?
Well, I thought it was a good movie, but what I would say is that, yes, it can be a scary thing to be a whistleblower, and I counsel everyone about the risks. But there are ways to make it smooth. You have the government, when you're working with the government on your side, and if you have a lawyer there counseling you and protecting you, that will give you some help too. And you have also the fact, if you know that they have done something wrong, that if you are doing it under the False Claims Act, for example, there is a huge award there to incentivize you to come forward, and you are taking some risks. Absolutely, but there are protections for you, and you weigh that before you become a whistleblower. You have to become aware of the risks, and then you make the decision to go forward. And my clients, of course, are all apprised of those risks, and then decide whether they still want to go forward, knowing that their career may be in jeopardy, but knowing also that this is something that they want to do. This is something that they are going to be protected from for doing, that they cannot be retaliated against for doing legally, and they are damages for doing so, and they will receive an award based on the government's recovery of the money that it has been defrauded.
Now, I'm going to ask a personal question for you. This has got to feel good when it works. This has got to be one of those things when everybody says goodbye and you're going to the subway or the car, wherever you're going, and you're alone. You say, all right, this was worth going to law school. This was worth, the sacrifice. We finally, it's that old phrase from The Untouchables with Kevin Costner. They go, let's do some good. Are you doing good? It sounds like you're doing good, Raphael.
It certainly feels good to do well by doing good, to make a living based on recovering money for the government and catching fraudsters. So that part of my practice, does make me feel good when there is a big resolution. I see, look, the government has just recovered several $1 million. Even if the government's just recovered back, I have some smaller cases and larger cases recovered back $1 million. That it all feels good. It's funny how much fraud there is, that even the small cases are huge amounts of money, and it feels good to recover on behalf of the government and the fact that all taxpayers are being defrauded.
Well, you said it there. There you go. See, the thing is, I'm not crazy about the word government, but I love the word taxpayer. So you are a little bit of a Robin Hood for the taxpayer. Do you mind giving me 30 seconds on your firm? I used to love L.A. Law. I used to love Perry Mason. So do you practice it with the old mahogany stuff? Or do you tell me when you got to get in there? They say, all right, Raphael, you're staying late tonight. No, I was going to the Knicks game. You're not going to the Knicks game. We're at trial tomorrow. So where are you when you're, getting ready for the big one? You got to go to court. Where do you practice your opens? Sure. Where does that happen? Tell us where the drama occurs.
Well, our office is down by Wall Street, right near the Bull on Broadway, and that is where we're near the courts, and that is where we get our work done. But in this type of practice, even when I'm home, I'm always thinking about cases and working. So it's kind of like it never stops, and I like it. It's a very exciting practice, and I'm very open to my clients contacting me. At all times. But our office is down here. That's where we do most of our preparation down in Wall Street area.
That's exciting, man.
It's yes.
Yeah, it is. It's like a Scorsese movie. You're like a Scorsese movie guy. You come in, you still look good at 10 o'clock at night because you have that great outfit on, but the hair is a little mussed. You go for a little chai tea because you're a healthy guy, and you're like, I'm going to read this case law. And then, 2 o'clock in the morning, the Turner Classic Movies has a 1933 movie. The jury comes in innocent. You pop up off the couch, and that's it. I got it. And then you don't have to call anybody. Because you could just go to your iPhone.
I don't know if it's quite as exciting as a film, but I will say that this practice that I do is one of the more exciting ones. You're involved in government investigations. You're involved in catching fraudsters. It's definitely one of the most exciting practices that I have.
It is. You're swashbuckling. I'll say it for you. You're swashbuckling a little bit. You know what that term means? Remember the old days? The swashbuckling? Yes. They'd come in at the last second, whoosh, and then they would save the day. All right, well, I myself spent some time in the institution known as law school. And I just remember guys like you that were excited about being there. And then there were guys like me looking at that radio station across the street going, did I go into the wrong parking lot? So really, thanks so much for spending time with us today.